Hey guys, it's Danny. Hope you all had a great weekend. Today we are going to make some project updates, or actually some updates on some orchids that I used in some tutorials or some projects and things of the sorts. It's a bit of a mixed bunch, but some of these orchids have not been seen in years, I think, but they're still around. So we're gonna take a look at popular stuff such as the vanilla, but also very unpopular stuff such as a keiki, which I saved about 2 years ago, and he's still around. So let's just start. Which one should we start with? I know, the vanilla. And here she is. Yep, it's a very tall orchid at this point. I cannot fit her in a frame without you seeing the light fixtures and everything. So let's just zoom in and look at it in segments, shall we? This is the very top of the orchid, the one actively growing at the moment. She is swirling around this trellis, and she is using her aerial roots to catch on and stay very well secure. Now, those of you who are older on my channel might already know we have quite the history with this orchid. Throughout the years, ever since I received it from one of you guys, PS, if you're still watching, say hi in the comments. So ever since I received my cuttings, I tried various trellises and rods and supports and things to accommodate the climbing nature. And some stuff worked, some stuff didn't. She overgrew some stuff. So every time I bothered her, I ran the risk of actually snapping the main vine, which I'm not proud to say, but I did snap. So I set back the orchid quite a few times. Currently, I don't even remember if this is a offshoot that I broke or the second cutting that I received. It's one or the other, but I have two vines actually in this pot. One which is older, it's this one in the back, which currently is not actively growing. I actually broke the tip. So let me just show you. There we go. This is where this vine ends, and as you can see, we have a dried up little something here. This one is not actively growing at the moment. It's not sending out an offshoot. It's not actually doing anything. It's just looking okay and probably growing roots because it's hydrated, but it's, oh, well, maybe it's gonna start doing something there. Am I in the frame? No, I'm not. All right, so I'm just noticing that there might be an offshoot starting here just now, but it didn't do anything since the beginning of the year or more, since I broke it pretty much. However, the shoot in the back, or actually in the front, sorry, starts right here. You can see this is an actively growing root and goes up the trellis. It is actually attaching itself to the trellis with the little roots. That one is the active growing vine at the moment. And since I have such a history with this orchid, I'm terrified of working with it, repotting it, and so on and so forth. I don't need to repot it currently, but I'm not using the best quality of media here. So sooner or later, I will have to repot it. If it will start to smell bad, I will take you along because, hey, I documented all of the fails with this orchid. Might as well continue to do so, right? I'll link you down below to the videos in which I featured it, so you see a little bit of its history. It's quite interesting. But yeah, I don't have a clean record with this orchid. However, it is doing great now. And what I like most about it is that it is actually growing and developing. So let's look at the base here. Do you see how tiny these leaves were? Maybe half of my palm in size. Well, the leaves at the top are considerably larger. Look at this one. That's how it's supposed to be, actually even bigger than this, I think. The stem has thickened as well, and I believe it will be more and more massive as it develops. So hopefully one day I'm gonna make a video about its flowers, but until then, we have a saying in my language which I will try to translate. Oh, I think I got it, and it actually rhymes. From mistake to mistake until the victory at the end, or something of the sorts. For those of you who are Romanian, you know what I mean. It pretty much refers to fail upon fail until finally you get it right. And well, that's the history with me and this orchid, but she's still around and I love it. Next up, the Vanda fertilizer pouches. And yes, this is a big Vanda once again. It doesn't really fit in my frame. I think I need to get myself a bigger backdrop. Anyway, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll link it down below. Recently, actually, I've added some slow release fertilizer pouches. I was inspired by some people on the internet. Anyway, you'll see the video down below in the description. I wanted to try it out. Since currently I'm keeping my Vanda orchids outside, I'm using my garden hose to water them. I use tap water. So I thought the little pouches would be a great way to fertilize them without much hassle. And it actually was fantastic, I have to say. I clearly notice a difference. Yes, it's very, very subtle right now. I'm going to show you multiple orchids. The crowns actually are a lot more vigorous, a lot thicker than the rest of the orchid. And I know I cannot really show you a proper, let's say, frame with this orchid, but I hope you can see how thin the stem was. And then in this part, it just thickens up. And I know it's recent, but I can swear that I see a difference. And I do believe the extra nutrients made a difference. These orchids are heavy feeders, and the typical dosage of nutrients that I give to my other orchids is absolutely not enough for these orchids. And using my pump spray, it's not economical. Soaking them would take me forever because I have 30 vandas. I used to struggle with the fertilizer and it showed, and now it actually shows that I'm not struggling anymore. So let me bring another vanda. All right, this is the Patera Pink. I have this orchid for 4 or 5 years already, or 6. She is a pretty old orchid. So let's just look at it entirely. Yes, it's always done okay, but on this section of the orchid, it looks like a typical Patera, I have to say. I'm not sure how to describe it, but the very, very, very top is just different. Here, not so much, but here and these two leaves, they're different. I can see they're wider, they're fleshier even. There is a difference that I'm noticing. And this actually happened recently. Everything just looks a little bit more massive. It's very subtle, and I'm not sure if you can tell on camera, but I can see it with my eyes. Let me show you another one. This is a newer orchid. I have her for 1.5 years or so. But again, with this one, I can see the tiniest bit of difference here at the crown. I can swear, actually, I think on this leaf, let me try to give you an example, which I think shows. This leaf looks in a way up until here, and from here downwards looks different. It even has a different color. In real life, I can see it. This is a little bit more flimsy. This is a little bit more vigorous. This is a vigorous leaf, and this is a vigorous leaf. I think it's the fertilizer. And it's not necessarily the type of fertilizer, it's just that I just managed to deliver more nutrients. So if this pouch idea worked so well and I have such good results, why is the pouch not attached to the orchid? Well, just because it's a good idea doesn't mean it fits me and my lifestyle and what I had to do to make it work. First of all, the way I attached the pouches was from the hanger. The best way to deliver the nutrients from this little satchel was actually if I put it somewhere here. Now, the problem with this is whenever I would water, the jet would just make it deliver its nutrients outside of the basket. So I would have to find the proper angle for it to actually drip inside this basket. And that meant sometimes just getting in there where I keep my Vanda orchids and having a shower myself as well, a fertilizer shower that is. And that pretty much got really old really fast. I was thinking of actually making an automated system, but looking at the exact area where I keep my Vandas, it's not that easy. I have to run some more hoses and stuff in the area, and it was just not something I wanted to do necessarily right now. Also, on some Vandas, sometimes, depending how the wind blew, the pouches were actually touching the crown or the stem, and wherever they were touching, they would make a low bruise, and that's not funny. With one of the Vandas, I saw the pouch one day here in the crown like this, dripping in the crown. Oh no, not a good idea. I don't want to have excess salts in the crown, bruising the cuticle, and yeah, no. Every time the wind blew, something happened with these pouches. And every time I tried to water, I had to make sure that whatever was running from the pouch was actually going inside the basket. And that just became too much. So what I decided to do was keep the fertilizer, but apply it differently. So I applied it straight as it was in the medium, but I put a little bit more moss on top just so it stays moist a little longer and has more contact with these beads. So that every time I water, I actually flush everything and I make all of these nutrients just go through the pot, never pretty much having too much excess around one place. Now, this has pros and cons. The major con is that if you put a quantity of fertilizer in the basket and you decide, oh, that was a little bit too much, you need to pretty much remove the medium and get all of these little beads out, which can be rather tedious. Hence why the pouch was actually a pretty controlled way of fertilizing. Now, of course I could do this, but it doesn't look good. I didn't want to do that. So the quantity of fertilizer that I added here is actually just a little bit, maybe a quarter of what I added here. And I will see how things go. If I need to add more, I will add more. I think it's enough. The problem is not adding too much. So that's why I was initially very interested in the pouch idea, because I could control the beads. I had a bad experience with over-fertilizing some Cattleya orchids with the slow release fertilizer. I didn't want to repeat it, but I think I have a sense of how much I should add right now. And I think this will work better, and I don't have to water from above or make sure that the flow actually reaches the basket of the Vanda. So great idea. The way I can execute it, not the best. The way that I can tend for the orchids, not the best for this idea. Definitely a great idea to keep in mind. And I wasn't expecting to actually visibly see differences so fast, but I can. So yeah, Vandas are heavy feeders, and slow release ferts definitely did good. But the application method, that can be more or less useful depending on how you keep your orchids. Next up, an orchid most of you don't know, I presume. A couple of years ago, somebody gave me 2 orchids to try and save, and I actually made a video on it. Again, you'll have the link down below. It turned out to be quite a popular video on my channel. Long story short, I could not save those orchids. They were already gone. Crown rot, stem rot, I don't know, something happened to them. They were already completely dry. But one of them had 2 keikis on its flower spike, and the flower spike just had a little segment which was still green. Everything was dry. Now, one of the keikis didn't make it. It barely had any roots, but the second keiki, it's this one. It's still around. Now, it was set back for the longest time. I was not expecting it. It barely actually grew a leaf in its first year and another 2 leaves afterwards. And it just didn't do all that great. And initially I thought, oh well, it might actually have issues. Who knows exactly what happened to that orchid? So I didn't actually do anything to it. It's still in semi-hydro, can you believe it? Sorry about that, hope it wasn't too loud. It was very loud for me. So yeah, it's still in semi-hydro. It never actually made the transition to self-watering because I did not think it would make it. I thought it had like issues that I could not solve. But of course, I didn't put it under a bench or anything. I kept it in decent light. I gave it fertilizer, I gave it water, I tried to tend for it. I just didn't change the setup because it didn't really have enough roots. It was doing okay with the amount of water this container could hold. And then out of the blue, it started to grow. It produced a ton of roots, as you can see. It is time to repot it. Yes, I will do that soon. And now it's growing this leaf, which is looking great. And I did not do anything to it. I use the same fertilizer for 3 years now, the same water, the same everything, and this orchid is in this pot for a long time. So yeah, it just decided to grow now, I'm guessing because it has enough roots now. It never actually had a tremendous amount of roots to feed everything, but now it does, and now it's doing good. So there he is. I'm actually quite excited to see what color it is. Can you imagine if it's another white Phalaenopsis? I hope not. But anyway, not that I don't like them, but I have too many of them. So for those of you who were wondering whatever happened to this keiki, he's here, he's still around. I kind of gave up on the idea that he will pull through, but I tended for it. Now I will repot it hopefully this week. I'm gonna give it a normal standard 13 centimeter pot. The roots inside the medium are not very cramped, but they're enough. They're a little cramped. And already this pot is not cutting it when it comes to water. The reservoir is not big enough to keep this orchid hydrated as long as it needs to be. So yeah, there's the little guy. I'm hoping this winter we're gonna find out what variety he is. Next up, my Cattleya seedlings. I recently worked a little bit with them because, if you remember, I talked about them in a different video when I referred to calcium deficiency, which, let me find, okay. This one still has an issue here. The problem was that the leca was making it very hard for them to actually absorb nutrients, I suppose. And being that they're seedlings, and if you didn't know, Cattleyas are some of the most calcium-hungry orchids out there, and being that they're seedlings makes everything all the more worse because they don't have storage, they're in active growth. Each pseudobope needs to be quite a lot larger than the other one. Anyway, long story short, I decided to put them in a mix of leca and sphagnum moss to decrease naturally that pH, and that worked out pretty great. until summertime when I discovered I didn't have enough sphagnum moss. They were drying out so badly. And I went to see why, and I discovered that they were actually full of roots, and all of those roots were absorbing the moisture like in a day or two. So I decided to switch them to a more water retentive setup, and behold, 2 of them have outgrown their little pots. Yay! The babies are growing. Not sure if you can see the roots through these pots because they're all in the middle, they're all tucked in there. But yeah, these 2 little Cattleyas are not all that tiny anymore, and when I received them, they were just the smallest things. I'll try to find the original video with them and I'll link you to it down below. I had them in semi-hydro in leca. It didn't work out that well. They were drying out too fast. The preparation of leca was a little too much for me, and it showed with the seedlings, because these are hungry orchids, very hungry orchids. So I think this works out a little bit better for them, and I'm happy that 2 of them have grown enough to be able to sit comfortably in a standard 13 centimeter pot. But yeah, the babies are growing, and hopefully in 2 years I'm gonna see blooms. Yay, 2 years shaven off of them, 2 more years to go, 2 or 3, and we're gonna reach maturity. I don't really like seedlings, but I am so happy to see them grow. I'm so happy to own them. Yes, the wait is long, but yeah, I'm happy to see them grow. And the last orchids we're gonna look at, an Oncidium and a Cattleya. These are 2 different projects, but at some point they were featured in the same video. So let's start with that. I made a video in which I explained my ICU concept for sick orchids. Again, links down below. And in that video, 2 of the orchids were these ones. This is the Oncidium Sweet Sugar. I purchased it because it's very nostalgic. It's the first Oncidium I ever purchased. I lost my original one. I found another one for sale in very horrible condition. And it took a bit, but here he is. He's pulling through. We have the newest pseudobulb looking very well. Well, actually, I think this was the newest pseudobulb. Very tiny. And then this is the second, quite a lot bigger. And it's already growing a new growth here. And this little orchid, wow, this is the Cattleya that developed that really nasty pseudobulb issue. I had to cut all of them away, and I was left only with a new growth, which was not developed. And it pulled through, it created a new growth of its own, and now it's growing a tiny little root here as well, which is great because this orchid could actually use a better root system. Now, one thing that I did, sadly, was put it too close to my window, and it touched the window, it got hot, and this is what happened where it touched the window. So I had to pull it back. I don't even know how it happened. I just think one of the other orchids, I placed it and I just pushed this one, I didn't realize it. But yeah, hopefully it's not going to affect more of the leaf than this. If it does, I'm going to have to carve this out and leave the leaf alone. This orchid needs all the amount of roots and leaves it can have. So yeah, but anyway, she's doing okay. I cannot believe I saved it. You'll have the video with it down below. It's incredible really that she pulled through. It's a beautiful looking orchid. And whenever I see things like these, although I know what happened to it because it was touching the window, so most probably that's what it is, being that right after I purchased it, we had issues with the pseudobulbs, whenever I see something like this, I'm a little worried. But I think she's okay. This new growth looks okay. It's putting out roots, so I think she's okay. I would just prefer it to not have blemishes. Anyway, what to do? I'm happy they're both around, and I'm really happy about this Oncidium. I cannot wait to see those beautiful yellow flowers once again. I have not seen that particular flower in years. I'll make sure to also add a link with this orchid in bloom, not this one, but my previous one, so you see how pretty she is. So that's about it for today. Next time on Wednesday, it's going to be the 31st, but since I'm not uploading every day anymore, we're gonna make the What's in Bloom video then, even though traditionally I make it on the 1st. Well, that's not really going to happen anymore, so we're just going to be around the 1st of every month. Again, we have a heck ton of orchids to go through, which is lovely. So stay tuned for that, and I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Let me know down below if you want to see other orchids you didn't see in a long time, and in the next updates I'll try to make sure I'll show them. And you know the drill, like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As and other fun orchid subjects. And if you'd like to support the channel, do consider visiting the merch store down below. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!